Range missiles from its east coast this morning, so says South Korea's defence ministry. We're joined now from Seoul by Dr. Robert Kelly, who's a professor of international relations at Pusan National University in South Korea. Welcome to you. Short-range missiles, should we be concerned?
Probably not. The crisis a couple months ago, or last month, really needed to end in some successful way on the northern side. The North needed to do something to tell its people and its elites that they had stood up to imperialist aggression and those sorts of things. So I think most people thought some kind of missile launch was necessary for regime security at home. This is a nice way to get those missile launches without actually threatening anyone. The Japanese and the South Koreans threatened to shoot down the missiles. The North doesn't want that. So this is a nice split of the difference.
Yeah, Robert, the cyclical nature of this is interesting, isn't it? We had that heightening of tensions. It went on, for 5 or 6 weeks. It became a global crisis, all eyes all over the world turning to North Korea. And then the whole thing calms down until today.
Right. Yeah, that's true. I mean, the North is militarily actually more fragile than a lot of people think. It is true they have a great, sort of a substantially larger conventional military than the South, but it's very old. It has a lot of equipment from the Soviet days, from the 60s and 70s, things like that. It's obviously very poorly nourished. It doesn't train very well. So the big ace in the hole for the North is really nuclear weapons. They don't want a war. I mean, I've said this on this network and other networks, but it's very, very unlikely that North Korea wants a war because they would lose very quickly, right? So they didn't actually want the brinksmanship to go over the edge, which is why they probably pulled back a couple weeks ago. Now they do a little something to sort of finish it off, and then they can get out of it without actually provoking a real conflict they'll lose.
Yeah, that delicate dance, the suggestion's been, I dare say, possibly from you and certainly other analysts as well, that it's all done as a gambit, as part of effectively almost a policy of blackmail. They make threats, sometimes backed up by actual physical wherewithal, the missile technology, all the rest of it, to win concessions from major powers around them, not least the South Koreans, but obviously the Americans too.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's quite accurate. I think that the North doesn't want to change domestically. It doesn't want to actually change its economy and governing structure, because if it does, then it admits that it needs to change. It needs to be more like South Korea. That raises the question of why don't you just unify? So the North can't really change very much without sort of a slippery slope toward unification. The problem is the North's economy is a terrible failure as it is, which means without change, the only thing they can do is push outsiders for money and rice and aid. And that's what, like you said, the dance, that's what this is, right? I mean, every couple of years they come back and they have to bargain and brinksmanship their way into concessions, and that's what they really want. That would be my guess. That's what most analysts think, I believe.
Yeah, and it begs the question whether this is a one-off blip or whether it's the beginning of some concerted military activism by the North.
I would imagine they'll come back again in a couple of years. Again, like you said before, the North has a sort of there's like a pattern, right? Of sort of like a cyclical pattern. They come back and they ask for this stuff, but they can't go too far. Again, they don't want a war they're going to lose, right? So they can't push too much, right? You push a little bit, then you step back. They've done this before. So we'll be having this conversation again in 2 or 3 years.
Okay. Dr. Robert Kelly joining us there. Thanks very much indeed, Bob. Now, police say they could be a step closer to solving the disappearance of Madeleine McCann, a Scotland Yard